have no idea what we're doing.
They're in my bag. Why are we not giving them back?
I don't know.
Should get on my card,
we are
too.
live once again. We are here at What Works for Kids 2019. I am joined again by my podcast compadre, BIanco.
Greetings.
And we are also joined by Kevin Donatello.
How's it going?
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it very much.
Is this your first podcast? Have you ever been on a podcast
I have
before?
been on a podcast before, yes.
Oh, you have?
I have,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
What podcast have you been on?
I was on TeacherCast.
TeacherCast. Good people. So, Kevin, what brings you to What Works for Kids 2019?
So I saw the advertisement by AJ on Twitter, and I thought I had a really great thing to offer the educators and school leaders of universal design for learning. And so I, applied for it and, presented on it.
So what did you present? Take us through it.
So talked about what the principles of universal design for learning were: the engagement, the action, and the representation, if you will, and then how I applied in my classroom. How I applied in my classroom using a tic-tac-toe board with 9 different learning modalities. So I'm really hitting on all the students and trying to make sure that they understand the concepts behind, in this case, colonial America. And it's really great because the student work is showing that they're getting more out of it than they ever would just from me either lecturing or, teaching otherwise. So the research they're doing on their own, coming up with some great things from Google Slides to storytelling to inventing their own crops, their own colonies. It's something truly magical happening in the classroom.
Can we nerd out for a second? We have 3 socialist teachers here. We have to take a minute to nerd out. 3 socialist teachers.
For the first time ever on the podcast.
Yeah. We can actually talk socialist and not have somebody go, oh, here we go again.
Let's do it.
We can have
right.
sports talk too. We should,
You like
bring
sports, Kevin?
love.
Sports.
We should bring Mike back
Love
in for a
sports.
sports segment that really gets Stacey aggravated.
Yankees, Giants, let's do it.
Nice. So what do you want to geek out about in terms of social studies?
So Kev, we're close. Kevin was my camper once. I was 13. Was I 16? And you were
Yes, yeah. You were 16.
Many
I was
years
13.
ago. That's 20 years ago, man.
Crazy.
No, 23 years ago. I'm old.
1998.
Wow. Anyway,
I could do the math.
how did I get 23? I wasn't 16 then, I guess. How old am I? Anyway, when we think about social studies and the choice boards, especially, it fits perfectly.
Yes.
So what inspired you to do the choice board for your students?
So I have to give credit where credit's due. I have a co-teacher, and I co-taught 4 years ago with her, and she introduced me, or the class really, to this using the book Number the Stars. And I saw the great things that the students were doing with it, and I said, why not apply it to social studies? And colonial America at the time, and still really fits into our unit, where this would fit in best. And it's really been showing some great results.
So what did you include inside of the choices for students to work on?
So they could create a historical fictional story about a colonial character. They can invent their own colony or create their own colony. And through that, they're really picking, let's say, New Jersey and doing the research on New Jersey and just maybe naming it something else. What else? They could invent a crop and, where does it grow? What type of soil it needs, the climate, those types of things.
That's literally inventing a vegetable?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Someone invented a money tree. And
If only if.
Where are the seeds?
Yes.
yes, exactly. I asked the
Kids
same
gonna have
exact
a
question.
fortune.
I go, can this grow like $100 bills, $1 million bills? So, just things like that. That shows they're really going to do the research. It's nothing that they're regurgitating back that I had said or someone else had said.
And I really like what you're explaining there. It's totally project based. When I've used choice boards in the past, I've told our listeners, a lot of mine is digital. So it's a lot of slides and presentation using student voice, but you're actually really putting the projects into it where students have to create more to get more out of it. I like that.
100%. They have their own little guide list for each project of what they have to include and what the expectations are. And really, it's just free range. Just go for it. Here's the board, make a copy of it in your Google, Drive and have at it. And there's really no teacher, driven thing behind it.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of evaluating their work, when it comes, I'm going to say you probably use rubrics.
Yeah.
Do you design all the rubrics for these different projects yourself? Do your students play a role in the rubric process?
Right now, I created just one generic one for all of them. So it's not 9 individual rubrics. It's 9 individual or 9 different expectations for each assignment. But as far as the rubric goes, it's one general rubric for everything.
Yeah.
And it seems to work well. And right now, the students don't have a say in it. Something that we definitely could, play with down the road.
I think that's the way to go. I think having that one rubric where everything kind of fits into it. I know it sounds weird to make it fit into something, but having 9 rubrics is just
See, now, this
outrageous.
year I did choice boards for the first time and designed there were 9, I had free space. So it was like a bingo board. But I did make a rubric where there was at least 1 or 2 categories that were unique to the project. So if I had them do Adobe Spark, there was something for Adobe Spark that was relevant to doing that project. Or I had them they could do a Google site. So how many pages, things like that. So there was at least 1 category on the rubric that was custom to the project.
And that's a great way to go. I'm looking up my phone right now to see if I could just pull up that rubric, just, how it was general, but it's definitely not a bad way to go make it more, driven towards that individual assignment.
AJ, do you think it matters what unit you're doing for choice boards? Or, Kevin, these are applicable all the time as long as we're willing to put the work in.
Yeah, I think it is. They could really be designed for anything. I personally, in the units that we teach in my school district, Colonial America really fits in the best. That is more of a free flow, if you will, of a unit where we have the Age of Exploration, where it's I don't think it would really fit in, or the events leading up to the American Revolutionary War, which I feel need to be a little more teacher driven, as opposed to just kind of go at it, just because there's so much more with the events leading up to the Revolutionary War than Colonial America itself.
Now, being a history guy, are you all about American history, or would you rather teach world or
American history?
American history.
I love American history, but I do understand that without the world history, we wouldn't have American history.
True.
So but if I had to answer American history all the way.
I'm also I teach world. I've taught world the last 2 years. I would love to get my hands on US 1, Foundations of Government. Really show those kids, hey, this is not actually how it works.
I agree. I love the American history. Teaching my 7th graders that US 1 aspect of it is a lot of fun. That's all I got. It's fun. And I love it.
Look at you so much with American history. I mean, you just think of how young this nation is. Right now, I'm kind of geeking out about this, right? How young this nation is and where we've come, as opposed to where other countries, how long ago they started out and where they are present day. We've made great
Compared
strides.
to other countries, we're like a teenager.
Correct.
And I think with U.S. history then and now, I think it's a lot easier to kind of make real world connections. Our kids don't connect to, well, maybe yours do, Chris. They don't connect to like the world history aspect of what's going on out there. They don't really pay attention to that.
Well, that's something I try and bring in. Right now, as we're recording this, we're getting ready to do a project around the atomic bomb in World War II, and they're going to debate and have to present both sides of should we drop it, should we not drop it. But then in talking with them during class, I connected to today and the fact that, we have our issues with North Korea and the Middle East and, Russia, and nuclear arms is still something we deal with today that started way back then in World War II. And we're going to get into the Cold War and all that historical geekery.
Goodness. Historical goodness that makes the world what it is today.
That's actually what I'm looking forward to most here at the end of the year, really shifting towards current events.
I mean, you find the right current event tied into any time period in history. And that's the best part about current events is, okay, let's take a look at this. And to our students, this is something brand new. But if you really go back and maybe peel the layers off the onion, if you will, this issue goes back further, or it happened, before, not just in 2019.
Great time to again plug one of my podcast recommendations, Through Line from NPR. I've talked about this.
I know. It's a good one.
Have you heard?
You should check this out.
No, I have not.
I don't know if you're a podcast listener, but you should check this one out.
Every now and then.
Through Line is a podcast from NPR that they start with an issue today, and they basically trace it back to an origin point, and they connect the dots, the through line, back to the present.
That's pretty cool.
So in doing a recent unit, they had one, it was titled White Nationalism. And they were talking about Trump and the state of America and how do we get there? So it goes all the way, and it went through World War II because we were doing our unit on the Holocaust and the Nazis, etc. And it went back to this guy at the turn of the 20th century who was from Brooklyn, and his name escapes me, but I know I mentioned this episode before. It basically connected the dots to white nationalism today and how America inspired the Nazis based on our Jim Crow laws and how we divided ourselves racially amongst blacks and whites in the middle of the 20th century. And Hitler and the Nazis took inspiration from how America set up these laws and how we didn't directly call out Africans, but you know what I'm talking
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Speaking of World War II and the Nazis and the Holocaust, I was doing some research, and apparently, according to the History Channel, during World War I, we know that Hitler was a German soldier, and he was injured in a battle, and about 150 yards away, a British soldier had his gun aimed on Hitler, had his eye set, had the finger on the trigger, but for some reason didn't pull the trigger. Maybe he was, felt bad, a little empathetic. But just think about that for a second, how different this world would be if that trigger was pulled.
I mean,
sounds like a podcast.
11/20. What's that book from Stephen King?
Oh, the one with
11.
Yeah, the date 11/20/63 or something like that.
I mean, that's going into Kenny, but the idea of who's the one person everybody wishes they could go back in time and kill?
Sure,
Hitler.
Seems to be the going thing. I mean, come on. This is the one guy. My kids were shocked when they saw, because for our end of the year project, we're doing a person of the year as their culminating project. One person from all the time periods that we talked about, who's person of the year. So they were looking through some Time magazine covers and they saw Hitler was person of the year in I think it was 38. And they're like, why was he person of the year? And I was like, great, you're curious. Let's talk. And I had to talk about all the good things he did with the Olympics and how everything else was kind of hidden. And they're like, wow. And that was it. Because they're kids. That was like a goldfish times.
Well, then only, 1 year later, 9 months later, September 1, 1939, he invades Poland. So
it's amazing how things change.
In a matter of months.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true. Time of the year to the most hated person of all time.
To this day.
Correct.
Sounds like a podcast.
So I could talk about history forever.
So there you go.
You should start a podcast.
I'm telling you, it sounds like a podcast. Like right here, he's got the basis
That's
for
the show. Kevin's got a podcast. That's the name of the show.
I love it. Trademark.
There you go.
TM.
There we go. Yes, TM.
Which I actually recently learned. You could put the TM next to anything.
Well, Michael Scott does all the time.
All right.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky.
Michael Scott.
I have that. My co-teacher for my birthday got me that poster. It's hanging in my classroom.
That was my quote on the board one day.
Was it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Kids like it. The kids love The Office.
Who doesn't?
Seriously.
Anything I do, at Rutgers, kids are pulling office clips when we talk about work and the business world and what not to do.
What not to do. That's it. Michael Scott, that's what not to do.
But why not to do? He had some great relationships. Exactly. He had great relationships.
Michael Scott to be the principal of their school.
Absolutely. Well, that might get a little dangerous, but
Toby would not
him.
like that.
All you HR people out there, too rigid. Have some fun, guys.
All right. Speaking of fun, Kevin, thank you for being here. This was a blast. How can our listeners continue to connect with you and learn from you?
Sure. They could, follow me on Twitter at Mr. MRKD24, and which I just learned I probably should change somewhere down the line. But the number 24 does have a meaning to me, so I do like to incorporate it any way I can. But right now it's MRKD24.
Kevin Donatello EDU.
Make sure you follow the right one.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Kitty.
For Kevin, AJ, and myself, let's send it back to Chris, AJ, and Stacey.
We talk Yankees.